Okay, so we're starting Unit 2B packet, proofs, congruent triangles, and similar triangles. First thing we're going to look at is congruent triangle notes. So congruent means that something has the same shape and the same size. And we use this symbol right here to show congruency. So congruent triangles are triangles that have 3 pairs of congruent corresponding sides and 3 pairs of congruent corresponding angles. And remember from last unit, corresponding means that they are in the same position. So we are going to be looking at congruent triangles, their measures. We're going to do proofs with congruent triangles and all that good stuff. But first we need to look at how we can find out or show congruent sides and congruent angles. So we use these tick marks on each side to show congruency, and we use arc marks on angles to show congruency. So if we're looking at this and we want to see what's congruent to side AB. Side AB has 1 tick mark. Side DE has 1 tick mark. So AB is congruent to DE. Then we have BC has 2 tick marks. EF has 2 tick marks. So BC is congruent to EF. Then CA has 3. FD has 3. So CA is congruent to FD. Then with angles, you'll look at the arc marks. Angle A has 1 arc mark. Angle D has 1 arc mark. So angle A is congruent to angle D. Angle B has 2 arc marks. Angle E has 2 arc marks. So angle B is congruent to angle E. And angle C has 3 tick marks. Angle F has 3 tick marks. So angle C is congruent to angle F. So now each one of those sides or angles that has the same number tick marks are corresponding angles or sides because they're in the same positions. So A corresponds to D. B corresponds to E. And C corresponds to F. So what we just wrote down here at the bottom is called a triangle congruency statement. All of these things we just wrote are called congruency statements. We have side congruency statements, and we have angle congruency statements, and we have triangle congruency statements. And we are going to use those congruency statements to tell what sides, angles, and triangles are congruent. So if you look at example 1, side JK has 2 tick marks, so it is congruent to side MN. ON has 3, so it goes with LK. And I go L to K because O had 1 tick mark, L has 1 tick mark. They are corresponding angles. And then N corresponds to K. Then MO is congruent to JL. Angle O is congruent to angle L. Angle K is congruent to angle N. And angle M is congruent to angle J. So when you're given a triangle with it already marked, you can just look at the tick marks and tell what's congruent. But when you're not given a triangle, like on number 2, you have to use the triangle congruency statement to tell what things are congruent or corresponding. So Q corresponds to X, R corresponds to Y, and S corresponds to Z. So if I want to know what's congruent to QR, purple and green, purple and green. So QR is congruent to XY. RS is congruent to YZ. ZX is congruent to ZX, goes with SQ. Then angle Q goes with angle X, so angle Q is congruent to angle X. Y goes with R, so angle Y is congruent to angle R. And then you have the three-letter angle, XZY. So X goes with Q, Z goes with S, Y goes with R. So angle XZY is congruent to angle QSR. So that is how we are using congruency statements in our notes, or in this unit. So if we scroll to page 2, we're going to look at congruent triangle measures. So if two triangles are congruent, then their corresponding sides and angles are congruent. So if we look at example 1, we can mark that picture based off of the triangle congruency statement. So A corresponds with D. So angle A is congruent to angle D. I'll put one tick mark on both. Angle B is congruent to angle E. So two tick marks on angle B and angle E. And then angle C goes with angle F. So 3 tick marks on C and F. Now, there's different ways you can look at how to mark the sides. You can look at AB goes with, or AB goes with DE, or you can do what I like to do, and I like to look at where the angles have one arc mark and go to the opposite side of that and put one tick mark on those sides. So opposite the one tick mark, or one arc mark, you have one tick mark. Then opposite the two tick mark, or two arc mark, you have two tick marks. So AC is congruent to DF, which is true. AC is congruent to DF. BC is congruent to EF, up here. And then the last one, across from angle C and across from angle F. You can mark them like that. If you don't want to do that, you can just look at the congruency statement. You can just look at this and go off of what's up here to mark your picture. But looking at these, to solve for angle A goes with angle D. We don't know either of those yet. So we're going to have to skip those for a second and then come back to them. Angle C. Angle C is congruent to angle F. Therefore, angle C is 35 degrees. Then angle E is congruent to angle B. Those correspond. They both have two tick marks, so angle E is 94 degrees. Now we need to find angle A and angle D. Since we're looking at triangles, we know triangles, angles add to equal 180. So 180 minus 94 minus 35 will give us our angle measure, which when you plug that in the calculator gives you 51. So angle A and angle D are both 51 degrees. Then we need to look at sides. So if we want to find side AC, AC has two tick marks. So on the right triangle, DF has two tick marks. DF is 12. Since they're congruent, that means AC is 12. To find side DE, DE has 3 tick marks. AB has 3 tick marks. Since AB is 8, DE is 8. And then EF has a 1 tick mark. BC has 1 tick mark. Since BC is 9, EF is 9. So that is how we find corresponding sides and find their measures based off of the other triangle. Okay. Now on example 2, it says triangle RST is congruent to triangle XYZ. And we want to solve for X and then find the lengths of the missing sides. So we only have one side on each triangle. On this triangle we have RS. So if I look at my triangle congruency statement, RS corresponds with XY. So that means those two sides are congruent. When two things are congruent, that means that they are equal. So if those two measures are equal, that means 2x minus 10 equals x plus 5. So with that, we can set that up and we can solve for x. So subtract x from both sides add 10 to both sides. Mark out what we're canceling. So 2x minus x is x. 5 plus 10 is 15. So x equals 15. And then we're going to plug it back in to find those missing sides. That's also a way that we can check and see if we did our work right. So 15 plus 5 gives you 20. 2 times 15 minus 10 gives you 30 minus 10, which is 20. So since both sides are 20, we know we did it right, and we got our answers. So if you would have got to this step and you didn't get 20 on both of them, that means that you did something wrong with your algebra, and you need to go back to this step and make sure that you did all your algebra right. Okay, so on the next one, says triangle JKL is congruent to triangle MNO. And this time we have angles. So on the first triangle we have angle K. So angle K corresponds to angle N. So those two triangles are congruent, so those two angles are congruent because they're corresponding. So if two things are congruent, their measures are equal. So to solve for x, we'll do 3x minus 6 equals x plus 50. Then when we'll solve, we'll subtract x from both sides, add 6 to both sides. So 3x minus x is 2x, 50 plus 6 is 56. Then you'll divide by 2, and you'll get x equals 28. So with that, you're now going to take that 28 and plug it back in. So 28 plus 50 gives you 78. And 3 times 28 minus 6 also gives you 78. So both of those angles are 78 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to skip a few. I'm going to skip 4 and 5. If you need to see those or you want to go back and do them, they are in your or in my key of the notes, so you can go back and check your answers if you do those. But let's look at number 6. So number 6 says triangle UVW is congruent to triangle TSR. Find the values of x, y, and z. So here we're only looking at sides. So you can go through and mark all your sides that are congruent, or you can just start and say you want to look for x first. So x is on side UV. So UV corresponds to TS. So those two sides are congruent. UV is congruent to TS. So that means their two measures are equal. So 12x minus 7 equals 53. And then we can solve for x using this equation. So we can add 7 to both sides. You'll have 12x equals 60. Divide by 12. And you'll have x equals 5. So now I've done one of the three things it wanted me to do. I solved for x. Now I want to go solve for y. So y's right here on RS. So RS, I'll put 2 tick marks on that. RS corresponds to VW or WV. So those two sides are congruent. So their measures are equal. So 5y minus 33 equals 57. So I set up my equation. Now I can solve for y. So add 33 to both sides to isolate the 5y. Then you'll have 5y equals 57 plus 33 is 90. Divide by 5. And you'll have y equals 18. Okay, then our last one, let's see, let's do blue. So we want to find z. So Z is on side UW. Put 3 tick marks on that one because it's the third one I'm doing. So really the only side left is RT. If you wanted to check that, RT goes with WU. So we can set those two measures equal to each other. So 3Z plus 14 equals 50. Solve for x, so subtract 14 from both sides. You'll have 3z equals 36. Divide by 3, and you'll have z equals 12. So that is how you can solve for missing variables when given congruent triangles and expressions for their sides. Now on number 7, you are given 2 triangles and you're given their angle measures. So this time I'm going to go through and I'm going to mark everything first before I even start doing any math. So I see angle P is congruent to angle C. So those are going to have 1 tick mark. H is congruent to N. So both of those will have 2 tick marks. So if H is congruent to N, then we know that H is 115. I can go back since P is congruent to C. I know C is going to be 36. Then my last one, S, is congruent to F. So I'm going to put 3 tick marks on those. And then we don't actually know an angle measure for S. So we can actually go ahead and find out what that angle measure is by doing 180 minus 115 minus 36. And when you put that in the calculator, that will give you 29 degrees. So angle S is 29, so angle F is 29. So now I have everything marked, and now I can go about solving the problems for X, Y, and Z. So X is right here at angle H, and we know angle H equals 115. So to solve that, I can do 6x minus 29 equals 115. So add 29 to both sides, and you'll have 6x equals 144. Divide by 6, and you'll have x equals 24. And remember, if you want to check your work, you can plug 24 back into this 6x minus 29 and see if you get 115 out. So our next one, let's solve for y. Whoops. 3y minus 1 is equal to 29. So 3y minus 1 equals 29. We know it's 29 because we found the 29 by subtracting 115 and 36 from 180. So now add 1 to both sides to isolate the 3y. 3y equals 30. Divide by 3, and you'll get y equals 10. And then our last one we have is, and we're going to solve for z. So 4z minus 32 equals 36. So add 32 to both sides. We'll have 4z equals 68. Divide by 4, and you'll get z equals 17. So there we solved for x, y, and z. So that is how we do congruent triangle measures. If you want more practice with this, the answers are in my notes key. So you can go back and look at those for page 3, 4, and 5. We did some of those. The answers are in Google Classroom on the Unit 2 at 2B key.